Hello, everyone. This is Jimmy Cultist back again with another Megalon video. Hopefully, there'll be many more to come. Now, we're going to try to, maybe work on the tail and a few other things. Also, I want to maybe work on the wings a bit. They are looking a bit rough, not going to lie. Also, the back definitely needs modification. Let's go ahead and hide this. Not too bad, though, I gotta say. Could be worse. Let's work on the tail for now, though. I think we're getting really close to the point where we can paint him. Of course, there's a few crucial things I've noticed with the head that'll need work. For instance, he's missing antennae, which are an aspect of Megalon. Also, his jaws are very undeveloped. The head is something I like to work on. I like to take great care with the head, because that's a part that's very important. Not that the body isn't, but, there's some big points going into the head. People's perceptions are widely shaped by the head, I find. Oh, let's reduce this a bit. I think that's a bit too high. We're going to leave it on hard blend, as usual. Let's kind of move these in a bit. Yes, get a nice scaly tail. And we can sort of make it more interesting later if we want to add, some special things here. Also helps us a little bit to get an idea of By the way, fun fact about these Godzilla creatures, a lot of them that I make, the tail seems to be the most thermo-costly part as far as graphics are concerned. I'm not entirely sure why that might be. Maybe it's because I cut them into segments. I would advise reducing the detail before doing that. I don't know if I've actually covered how I make these as far as logic and all that sort of thing. I think I must have done a video at some point covering it. How to make tails? Surely I've covered that. Maybe not. I might do a video on it. I'm probably not going to do a video on adding all the logic to Megalon, because it would take a long time. But he will have logic, so... I have a special system developed where I can quickly imprint logic onto the puppet using an already created template. Previously, I went through all the heavy lifting to get the template as refined as I could. That way I can just stamp it in and quickly develop kaiju with relative ease. I think I'm going to change this slightly. We're going to go for the more barbed look at the back. Maybe subject to change, we'll see. Oops. Clipped mirror really comes in handy when you're making this sort of thing. I think that's going somewhere. I don't think many people are going to see that particular part of the tail, so it's probably not a super big deal what that end looks like there. Let's kind of move it over to the side. It's not quite centered. And we may go in and make a few minor modifications. Add to the scaliness of it a bit. There we go. It's funny how much I've improved at this over time. After I'm done with this Megalon, you know, I'm going to be releasing it. But you ought to go and take a look at the old Megalon I made just to see how much things have progressed. It's also a good idea because if you're an artist, it's okay if your early work doesn't look as good as your later work. A lot of people get hung up on that. They immediately want it to look, what is the word? Perfect. And sometimes you have to go through a lot of iterations on things to make them good. Nothing is truly perfect, of course. There's just stuff that's like, you know, past the point of garbage. A lot of the first things you make are garbage. Not always. What I find is there's kind of like a kernel of like a really good idea in the first stuff that you make. Kind of like You can have some really good ideas, it's just they're not quite fully crystallized, you know? I'm actually a big fan of taking things that I've already created and just sort of redoing them or revamping them in my art. And a lot of the stories that I create are actually pretty old. You know, they're things I developed a long time ago. Most of them from my childhood. I actually did, I believe, try to draw Godzilla stuff when I was very small. Don't think I have any of it left over. Sad to say. Probably wouldn't look that great anyway, but it's fine. I remember when I was a child, what I really wanted, I was playing games like Godzilla Save the Earth. And I was like, well, this is good. Like, but you know what I would really want? A Godzilla game where you could play as all of them. Like, all of the kaiju. Also, when I was a kid, I wanted a few that technically weren't Toho canon. You know, some of my personal favorites. Some silly ones that just didn't make sense, like the giant claw, for instance. Of course, anybody who knows what the giant claw knows, you know, anybody who knows what that is, realizes that, yes, indeed it does deserve to be in a Godzilla game. As a joke, perhaps, but nevertheless, it does deserve to be in there. I'm full of, you know, I'm the kind of person who actually likes to do silly things every once in a while. I don't like to take myself too seriously. A good example is Battlefront 2. You know, the one that EA made. Not the original Battlefront 2, the PlayStation 2 version, but the more recent remake that they made. I was pretty in favor of Jar Jar being added as a hero. As a playable hero. Just seemed to make a lot of sense to me. There were also a lot of other people that I kind of wanted them to add that were actually more sensible picks than Jar Jar, but Jar Jar was one of the ones I said they should add. I didn't say it out loud, of course. I just sort of sat on my couch and said, yeah, that's what they should do. But I didn't go to any forums and request it. It just seems to make a lot of sense to me, though, to have Jar Jar. Actually kind of surprised about who they left out of that game. Like, who they chose to include and who they chose to leave out was very baffling to me. Now, they had BB-8, which It's debatable whether something like a droid, you know, something like that, I would be confused if they put in R2-D2, but BB-8, you know, it's just kind of... Yeah, I don't think that quite works. I can't see BB-8 taking on Boba Fett. But there's like a lot of people that they left out who were just, you know, how? How do you leave out? Well, let's take a look at this. Like, how do you leave out Padme Amidala as a playable hero? Or how do you leave out Mace Windu? Seriously? No Mace Windu? I suppose, you know, there's probably people out there who think Mace Windu isn't that interesting. But they would be wrong. Mace Windu is cool, officially, in my book. Should be in the game. Kind of off topic here, though. We're talking about Godzilla now. Talking about Star Wars. I could do that too, though. I'm not going to do it in Dreams, but just know that if Jimmy was given budget, if he was given budget and time and a studio, he could make a pretty good Star Wars game. It might be a little bit, shall we say, unconventional. I have a rather weird approach to Star Wars. It's not a completely accurate representation, but I would say that Video Mercenary kind of has a tiny element of how I would do Star Wars. If you're familiar with it. Yeah, Video Mercenary is really strange. I might kind of dial that back a bit, but there'd still be some oddities here and there. I guess I always favored a more comedic and down-to-earth interpretation of Star Wars, at least for myself. I don't know if there's really been a comedy, not necessarily a parody. I don't think I'd do it like that. I wouldn't be trying to parody Star Wars, I'd just be trying to make kind of like a more lighthearted, silly look at it. Not that I couldn't do something serious, mind you. But I feel like serious has been done quite a bit. We've got a lot of serious Star Wars, maybe too serious. George Lucas actually added quite a few humorous elements. I think he actually comes closer to scratching my Star Wars itch than anything else that Disney's made. You know, the prequels had lots of silly things in them, which a lot of people didn't like. Some things that were unintentionally silly, perhaps. Probably should get back on the topic of Godzilla, though. I've gone way, way off topic. I feel like I could do almost anything. I'm very opinionated about a lot of different things. A lot of different properties, shall we say. Star Wars, even things that, you know, used to be slightly more obscure. Things like Dune and such. Dune isn't really obscure now, though. You know, thanks to the movie. It's all over the place. It was kind of a sci-fi classic. I mean, I wouldn't really call it super obscure, but let's just say it wasn't quite in the mainstream as much as it is now. It's kind of more fun when people don't know what you're talking about. Like when you just say something, you know, if you randomly quote something and people are just like, what the heck is that? I don't know why, but I always find it entertaining when they don't know what you're talking about. The 80s Dune, that's kind of, that's one I like to quote a lot. Used to baffle people what you know, just some really strange things. That movie, I don't understand what happened with the 80s Dune. Dune is already a strange story in a strange universe, but for some reason the filmmakers felt the need to make it more strange than it already was, and slightly more confusing. The movie is relatively enjoyable, though, if you actually are familiar with the book. If you're a complete stranger to Dune, though, I certainly wouldn't watch it as your first, you know, foray into the story or the universe. I feel like the new movie, the new Dune, 2021, I think it was. I don't remember when it came out. It's a lot more digestible and easy to understand, I think, although it may still weird some people out. Dune is a very well-written book if you've ever actually, like, popped into it, you know, just from, like, a literature standpoint. If you don't like the subject material, you know, subject matter, or the material or whatever, that's all right. But it's hard to argue about it being, you know, really well written. I actually used to hate Dune, if I recall correctly. I'm not exactly certain why. It just didn't click with me. I thought it was weird, I guess. But I didn't like it. I especially didn't like the 80s film. And now I'm completely the opposite. I actually love the 80s film. It's so hilarious and strange. And sometimes just plain good. There's certain moments in the film that are really well done, and other moments that aren't so well done. There's a few instances in which it suffers from tell, don't show. I think that's because they were trying to cram a really long story into, like a 2-hour movie. I heard originally it was somewhere around 3 to 4 hours, and then they cut it down, which makes sense. Too bad, though. I think they gave it a good shot. The set design is really good. Very good set design on the 1984 Dune, I believe it was. 1984. A lot of interesting stuff came out in 1984. I think they even made a movie called 1984 based off of George Orwell's novel, which is very ironic. Or shall we say, suitable? That's pretty good. I think I might modify this rear position here just a little bit. Kind of add that so it blends better. I realize that a lot of things I like, the mainstream public does not. And this is not on purpose, by the way. I'm not one of those people who arbitrarily, finds things that people don't like. But it just, it's not my identity to despise whatever the mainstream public likes. Although we are often at odds. For instance, a lot of the games I grew up playing were commercial failures at the time they came out. Well, I mean, some weren't necessarily failures, but they weren't really received that well. For instance, I've heard that the GameCube era, for Nintendo was actually not that well received. And there's a lot of games that came out, like Metroid Prime 2, and games like that, while they're critically acclaimed, people at the time just weren't interested. And I'm like, those are some of the best games I've ever played. And not just because, there was a certain factor of I played them as a child, but I actually played them, later, even past my childhood when I was older, and they're pretty good games. So it's not just nostalgia speaking. Another good example is Pikmin. Pikmin kind of had a difficult time getting its footing because it's sort of a strange game. I guess Pikmin 4 did quite well. I feel like they kind of made it as easy as possible for people, to understand, and they did their best to make it marketable. They added a dog, which I approve of, by the way. Adding dogs to things generally improves them. And maybe we'll leave that the way it is. Nope, I don't think we can leave that. We're gonna have to shave some stuff off here. I'm the kind of person who doesn't like shaving things off, but sometimes it has to be done. I'm one of those people who's very sentimental about design. Like if I make something a certain way, I don't really want to ever redo it. You know, I do end up redoing it eventually, but it's like, no, it was perfect the way it was before. And I often try to repeat certain design philosophies. Like, in some cases, you know, the older Godzilla models I've made, they don't look very good now, but I try to kind of capture the spirit as much as possible of what I was going for. Even if the new model doesn't really look that, you know, similar to the original. I'm sentimental in general. I hold on to a lot of old things. I have old drawings, you know, from when I was a child and stuff laying around. I didn't save as many as I should have, probably. Probably would have saved even more if I had known, you know, in hindsight. A lot of that stuff is kind of the formation of my creativity, you know. It's interesting to see how I developed. At least to me, perhaps. People in the big wide world aren't really interested until you're famous. Then suddenly everybody's interested. They're like, oh, how did Jimmy get to be the way he was? But I'm not famous yet, so it is my personal, you know, delight just to know how I developed my artistic inclinations. I think childhood is a big aspect of how your life unfolds in general. The things that you do when you're a kid are probably vital to how you develop as an adult and what you'll end up doing as a career. At least I would imagine so, based off my own life. I always thought the art was a phase, you know, when I was a kid. I was like, oh, I'll grow older, and then this stuff, you know, I'll give it up because you can't make money off of it. But not so much. I'm pretty sure it's a part of me. It's like, yeah, objectively. Objectively, Jimmy is the artist, and the artist he will stay. For better or for worse. Don't really see much point in doing anything else, I'll tell you that. I'm not interested in being a gas station worker or something of that nature. Not that there's anything wrong with that. I think people have different callings and different gifts. Part of the problem we have nowadays is too many people want to be artists who don't actually have the artistic inclination. They're basically just interested in fame and chasing clout. I could do without the clout, but what I do want is the means. I just want to make good art, and for that reason I chase, you know, I chase after clout in terms of audience recognition, because if you have a large audience, that increases the kind of art you can make. If you're successful, you can make more expensive art. I've already talked about this, though. I don't want to repeat myself too much. But yes, if I could be anonymous and also make really, really fantastic art, I definitely would do it, because I'm a rather reserved person. I do not like being in the public eye. I think the public doesn't like me being in their eye either. They like my creations, but a lot of people don't like my opinions because they're rather interesting. people who follow me closely, hopefully there's not too many of those. But you know that I'm a very peculiar person. I've got some interesting opinions. I don't actually think they're that controversial. I think people are just kind of... What is the word? People make a big deal out of things that actually aren't that big of a deal. And I think they even know it. A lot of people, they're like, oh, these people are crazy, they're stupid. It's like, no, they're not crazy, and they're not stupid. They know what they're talking about is put on. They do that on purpose. When people get upset at you for lukewarm opinions or whatever, when they get offended, it is an intentional display for a very specific purpose. And you may be asking, Jimmy, what purpose does it serve to get offended? Well, let's just say that our society rewards certain actions. And it rewards certain behaviors. And if you profess those behaviors, you get opportunity based off of those behavioral, how you act. If you profess to be offended about the right things, that is actually advantageous to you. These people are actually not wrong to get offended if all they're looking for is, material status. If you're looking to become more successful in life, you should be offended on a regular basis, because being offended is something you get rewarded for. Now, I'm the kind of person who just doesn't care. I will die in the gutter rather than be offended. I'm just sick and tired of, pretending to go along with this stuff. Society may have its way, and I'm gonna have mine. I don't care. I'm gonna say what I please, because ultimately that's what everybody wants to do. Even the people who get offended want to say what they think, but they can't because they're afraid of, oh, but then I won't get that position I want. And also, if you tell these people that's what they're doing, if you tell them it's performative, you should see them boil over. Because they know. They're aware. Now, some people might be genuinely deranged, actually. I'm not going to say that every single person who gets offended doesn't believe in the thing they're getting offended about, but a lot of them don't. A lot of people know. They know better than you think they would that it's fake. Ultimately, people in general don't really believe in anything. It's my opinion that maybe like 2% of the human population actually believes in anything they're saying, and the vast majority just want to live. The vast majority of people are actually just interested in status and getting along in life, Let me have my video games, let me have my comfort. And beliefs and all that stuff doesn't really matter. There's people who profess beliefs vehemently, but that's only because it's a part of their identity. They don't actually believe what they're saying. And they'll get really mad at you, and they'll get huffy, but at the end of the day, they know it's true. They know that their life is hollow. It's just the nature of humanity. Hopefully that isn't upsetting to my audience. It's not really something you should be upset about. After all, I'm just a strange fellow. I don't know anything. That's the good old mantra you can fall back on. If I ever say anything discomforting, just remember that Jimmy, he's just some random person. And what he thinks doesn't actually matter. Just remember that. And you'll probably, you'll sleep better. You'll be nice and comfortable. I know a lot of people, there's a few times where I've said things with people, they're like, oh, you must be insane, Jimmy. How could you say that? It's like, well, I'm not insane, actually. I just have slightly different convictions than most people. What I value is different from what everybody else values. What I'm after is different. Obviously. If I had like a regular perspective on life, like most people, I really wouldn't be here doing this. I find that life is a lot better when you have a weird perspective. Interesting things happen that never would happen if you were just a purely mercenary person who just, always was after money. Things would be more boring. So, I decided I'm gonna live things the unorthodox way. It's more interesting. On a slightly more related topic, I've been watching Godzilla the series recently. You know that, the animated Godzilla, the one from the 90s? Or was it the 2000s? I think it was 98 to 2000. Yeah, that's how long it ran. If I'm correct. I don't know for sure. It's not bad. If you're like a Godzilla fan, I would definitely advise watching it. It's very, the pacing is very brief because they have to fit it into 21-minute episodes and such. But as a person who actually doesn't have anything against the 1998 Godzilla, I find it fascinating to see what could have been, as far as if the story was expanded upon and elaborated on, which originally I think they did want to make a sequel, but it just did not pan out for reasons. I don't know if 1998 Godzilla was a commercial failure or not. I'm not aware of that. I guess I could look it up sometime. But the show is good. There were a few inconsistencies, I would say, between it and the 98 film. For instance, I think that Sitopoulos, Mike Sitopoulos, I believe his name is, he's a bit different characterization and even visually from how he appears in the 98 film. He was played by Matthew Broderick in that film, and he doesn't really look like Matthew Broderick or sound or behave like the character. He's kind of a little bit different. He's good in his own way, though. I think it's kind of like the real Ghostbusters approach. If you're familiar with the real Ghostbusters, it's the animated counterpart to the Ghostbusters. And in it, they kind of made the Ghostbusters different from how they are in the film. I think it's like creative license or something. But I've got to admit, if I was creating a show, I wouldn't want to be hampered by film canon to that degree. I don't know. It depends on what kind of thing it is. Sometimes you do want to be faithful as much as possible, but you also want to give people creative license. No doubt the producers also were involved. They probably were like, well, you gotta make Nick just a little bit less of a nerd. Make him more of a hero type, I don't know, though. He doesn't seem that bad. I also think there's some size inconsistencies, but this is kind of a general thing with kaiju media. Like, in an animated production especially, it's probably difficult, but Godzilla changes size quite a bit between scenes and such. It's not so noticeable, but you can kind of tell sometimes that, like, you know, oh, now he's as big as a building, but at that other time he was only the size of a boat. And he does grow a little bit, so that also adds to the confusion. Like, because he starts out small and gets bigger. But yeah, Godzilla changes size just a little bit. I like a lot of the creature designs for the creatures he faces, and I like how they were actually... They were pretty creative in terms of... They had Godzilla fighting monsters just like, you know, in the Japanese films, but they didn't just repurpose, you know, Rodan and a lot of the classic monsters, which would have been so easy and probably would have been, like, you know, crowd-pleasing stuff. But they actually went through the trouble to make up their own monsters with their own behaviors and their own abilities, and I think that's somewhat commendable. Keep in mind, I think what's impressive also about this show is, at the time, it was probably considered a rather, you know, what do you call it? You know, just kind of mediocre kids' entertainment. But by today's standards, it actually seems, you know, by what I see regularly coming out now, it actually seems really phenomenal in comparison. Like, there's a lot of development and care put into it for it just being a kids' show. The animation is a little bit cheap, but, you know, can you really get on people for having a low budget? Like this new Monarch show, you know, I don't know anything about it, I don't have anything against it. It just didn't interest me. I don't know. The monster designs, I took a look at them and I was like, eh. Compared to the Godzilla the series, they're kind of not that great. Godzilla series has way better monster designs. Also, they have a ton of monsters if you're, like, looking at the complete history of the show. Some of which are real winners. Not all of them are great, of course. You know, if you have a ton of different monsters, there's going to be lesser and greater examples to go off of. I think I'm going to reverse these scales. I don't want them jutting out like that. But, yeah, there's some good ones. That's a weird, I don't know what to call it, bipedal squid thing from episode 3, I believe. Comes out of the ocean. It's kind of light green color. I forget its name, but the design on that thing was actually really good. It was a weird creature. And of course, you know, if you're familiar with my work here on Dreams, I did actually put in a creature from Godzilla series, the chameleon. I added it to my game. But, yeah, I actually like the chameleon's design as well. Now, of course, I didn't put in the chameleon because I was familiar with the series, because I had never seen it before. Someone requested it back in the day, and I'm actually really glad that I did add it now that I've seen the series, because it's pretty good. Also, the design was good. That's mainly why I picked it, because I remember the person who requested it. They were like, you know, an acquaintance. And they said, you know, just pick one monster from the series, you know, maybe to add. Because I had added Godzilla 98 or Godzilla Jr. Whichever it was, I forget sometimes. But I added them. They're like, well, maybe to go along with that, you should add a monster from Godzilla the series. Just, you know, kind of an ensemble. And they gave me a choice between several monsters, and one of them was Chameleon, and I was like, yes, that's the one. I like Chameleon. I kind of wish that real Godzilla games would do things like this, you know, add more obscure monsters. Because it's really fun, I feel like. If you're someone who's only kind of familiar with Godzilla, you know, like you know Rodan, and you know Ghidorah, and then you like, you know, I think it'd be really fun to boot up the game and like, you're like, what the heck is that thing? I've never heard of that before. And then you look it up and you're like, oh, that's what it is, and all of a sudden, you know, you've discovered something new that you never knew about before. I remember when I originally played Godzilla Save the Earth, I had no idea who Orga and Megaguirus were. So it was pretty exciting, you know, to discover those monsters. I will admit, Megaguirus, not the most, you know, not the high point of the Godzilla series in terms of memorable foes. But still, it's just interesting to find out about new stuff. Orga was pretty cool, though. I still like Orga. Orga's actually underrated. The main problem with Orga is, in his own film, he doesn't get a whole lot of screen time, or, you know, he shows up at the very end, so he's a bit underutilized, which is sad, because he's not actually a bad design, and I kind of like his weird, bulky, you know, look. Kind of extend these out a bit so they kind of overlap with the scales. We could also maybe, you know, trim some off this just to make it a little bit more conducive to what we're doing. I really would like to get around to painting this fellow, but it's just every time I think I've got more time, I don't. Also, I want to stretch his head a bit. I'm gonna check that out, see what I can do about that. Here's a little tip for stretching. I don't know if it'll come in any handy, you know, for this particular instance, but I want to give it a try. If you take this little thing here, and if you've got a bolt attached, you can kind of, like so, you can stretch things out. The results are wonky, though. Are those actually grouped? I don't know why they would stretch with him. Oh well, let's not bother with the stretching. But I think his head should be taller, that's the main thing. I could perhaps do that myself. Let's not overdo it. I think maybe that's... let's take a look at this. Put it on hard blend, maybe that'll help. Also move the horn back just a tad. And maybe we can work on these jaws just a little bit. Yeah, I think that's as far as we're going to get. Sadly, we are out of time. But we're going to give a quick shout out to our monthly supporters on Coffee. Don't forget to leave a comment, tell us about future content you'd like to see, and your overall enjoyment of the video, and all that good stuff. And here's our monthly supporters on Coffee. Wonderful people. And that's all. If you enjoyed this video, don't forget to leave a like and subscribe to the channel. And don't forget to ring the notification bell so you never miss another video. If you wish to support our earnest insanity, you can check the links in the description to donate or buy merch. Until next time, goodbye.